All right, so today's date is the 21st of December 2020, and the current local time is 1:28 p.m. And we are here at the end of all things for 2020, which is interesting because it's been quite an interesting year. And so today I'm joined with my wonderful, illustrious students, some of them from the Oraculos School of Astrology, who have just participated in our first semester of our first year program, the Excellence in Astrology program. And first of all, I mean, to all of you who have stuck with it this long and this far, like truly congratulations on just sticking with that process, because the stick-to-itiveness that's required to show up 3 times a week for 3 hours per class, it's really a lot and it's really intense. And fortunately, the incoming batch of students to Oraculos are going to have a much shorter schedule, which I mean, probably some of you would have been happy with. Their classes are going to be twice a week, 2.5 hours per class. But all the same, it's going to be the same amazing curriculum, the same amazing content. And I am really happy to be sitting here now with you all, having gone through that process. So first of all, kudos to you and congratulations to all of you. Okay. So we are going to dive in just to get a sense from all of you what your experience has been like and where you were coming from astrologically before you began this program. What were some of your expectations, and also where you find yourself now?
First up again.
Yeah, you're the lucky number one, it seems.
All right. I came in as a self-studied student with really nothing but a few textbooks, the internet, and one actual astrologer in my life who helped kind of guide the way. But yeah, I came in mostly just through a few years of self-teaching and self-learning and curiosity and digging as deep as I could on my own until I felt I just needed a rubric or a pathway or some sort of bigger guidance to move forward with what I was like trying to process. And honestly, that's exactly what I got out of this class. It was really refreshing I really didn't have much understanding of modern astrology to begin with. So that most of what I'd been learning had been like through reading classic literature and just listening to, honestly, a lot of the astrology podcast and various other internet sources. So in that regard, I feel kind of lucky in that coming into this class, I felt like more of a blank slate to just like pick up whatever you were teaching. And that became really important because we really were learning in like an entire framework, an entire step-by-step process, and just an entirely whole new way of looking at a chart, for me at least, and like a whole new way of like really picking a chart apart like a choose your own adventure storybook. And I don't know, it's been absolutely wonderful to like get that groundwork and get that foundational information just to be able to look at a planet and a chart and know the general energy of that character in the story. And I don't think I would have ever intuitively put that together in the ways that, like, I could have read about essential dignities all day long, and being able to connect that's like the actual energy that this player in the story is giving to the story. Like, intuitively, that just, I don't know if that would have connected without having somebody specifically like walk me through the process and walk me through the step-by-step of, like, you start here, then you go here, then you go here, then you go here, and this all connects into a greater story within this chart. And that's amazing. It's been a gift. Truly.
Awesome sauce, Sam. I'm really happy to hear you share that. And I know for a lot of people, we haven't really connected in this sort of way outside of class, just because we've had such a full swing sort of schedule. But I love the thing that you said about choose your own adventure storybook. I've never heard that term before. And I love that, because essentially every planet within a chart and every fact within a chart does serve as a new place from which we can choose to start an adventure. And I'm really pleased that you took that within yourself and that you were able to really see the magic in that and find the excitement in that, because it is truly magic. And then the other thing that you mentioned about the rubric, which is kind of my favorite word because I'm a Saturnian person, but this whole concept of the rubric and having a rubric to follow. For me, when I was just starting astrology, I wished that I had someone's shoulders to look over. You know, I had no one. And I was just speaking on an interview I did a couple days ago that in the Bahamas, which is where I am, and even in moving to Jamaica, which is where I ultimately lived, and even in moving to Cuba, which is where I ultimately lived, there was always this sense of novelty surrounding me being the astrologer or me being the go-to person. And while that's great, for a lot of reasons why it is great, it also made me feel very isolated, as if I didn't really have people to connect with or someone to look up to, because I was creating the fabric of a very reliable and dependable system on my own, but I still wasn't sure if that's how it was done. So I really wanted to create an environment at Oraculos where you had the opportunity to consistently look over my shoulder while I was practicing. And we do that in class and we do that in the master classes. But I really wanted to create this space where you all felt as if there wasn't some secret sauce that I was holding up here, but that you were actively a part of my process in the middle of that process, so that you could see how I worked with and lived with astrology. And so, yeah, this whole concept of having a rubric and having a framework is really important, because I feel as if all of us are essentially building the scaffolding of an astrological temple within ourselves at Oraculos. And it's that temple consciousness that I really want us all to move through as we continue to move through the rest of the year and the rest of the program. This concept of being in a temple, being a custodian of a temple, and that you are actively taking part of building a temple of astrology within your heart, your mind, your body. So thank you for reflecting that. Shane Bowers.
Hi. So yeah, I studied astrology for a little over a year, and it was a modern astrology class, and that was about 7 years ago. And when I finished that class, um, I was still very curious about astrology, but I didn't, and from different reasons, I didn't feel confident enough to go about it or give a reading. So for the past 7 years, it's remained only a curiosity. And I think, now after going through this class, I realized that I probably wasn't ready or disciplined enough about it, or really, like, I wasn't ready. I was in a career, visual art career, that I wasn't ready to give up the time to pursue an interest like astrology. Um, so, but I kept the flame alive. Like on the weekends, I would uh, go to seminars and take a class here and there, and so it was, more like self-study for the last 7 years. And then COVID happened, and I had a lot of extra time, and I was signing up for more and more astrology seminars, and it had been kind of just like there, like it just kept nudging me to go back to school, but I wasn't sure where or how, or who. And then I saw you speak, and I was just really blown away by everything you said. And then I found your school, I signed up, and I really couldn't have never predicted how deep and intense and beautiful the learning process would be here. And I personally behind the scenes, I had to go through like a lot of kind of breakdown in order to be able to learn with the depth and the richness that you bring with your teaching style. And I just want to say that I truly believe in my heart that I don't believe that there is another school or learning experience like this. And the oral transmission, although it can be terrifying for, to get used to, because a lot of people are not used to speaking astrology, it can be intimidating, but you really hold that space and that flame. And sometimes that flame is a nice burning candle, and sometimes it's a flame under your butt to go for it. So, and I said this yesterday in the open house, but I feel like and this sounds strange, but I feel like I learned, like, despite myself. And that sounds strange, but I mean, you have to show up and you have to study and pay attention, but there is something really magical about the class experience here that it's a force of nature, and I'm so thankful for it. So, and there's so much more to learn and go, but I feel much more confident in my knowledge around the nuts and bolts of astrology, but also the spiritual richness that you put behind that more technical information. And with that richness, it really just sort of, embeds your soul and your heart in a way. It's a different kind of learning. So thank you for that.
Awesome, Sashin. And thank you so much for being in the open house yesterday. And also thank you so much for sharing that now. And yeah, I mean, I know that I can be a lot sometimes. And I think that this space is really an ocean. When you come to Oraculos knowing that you will have tiny death moments behind the scenes where you have to let go of something in order to open up space to receive something else, or in order to open up space to receive something greater. And several of us here, we've battled with each other back and forward in terms of navigating that process. I know I see Emma smiling. And I know that one of the things that we've fought with essentially is the languaging. And why does this languaging always have to sound this way? And where's the silver lining sort of thing? And I think that in the end, we all come. It's okay. In the end, I think we all come to this place where we realize that this is the shape of this system. This is the shape of a tradition. And beneath that tradition isn't just these rules that are devoid of life, but beneath that tradition are these rules that are actually based on life and based on the magic of life. And I'm so happy that you've experienced that magic for yourself and that you've chosen to be a part of that magic. And this other thing about learning in spite of yourself, I think that that is really one of the things that I hold within myself as being a gift of this space, not even just a gift of mine, but a gift of Oraculos. Because I think that if you show up and you just put yourself fully blinders on within this space while you're here, then there is a sense of I learn through osmosis, or I learn through just breathing this Oraculos air, because we're all here trying to accomplish the same thing. And insofar as that's our purpose, we all get zapped with the same bolt of lightning at some point. And it might come a little bit sooner, it might come a little bit later, but we all get inculcated with that spirit of what we're trying to share here at Oraculos, whether we like it or not. So I'm really happy and I'm really excited, and thank you for sharing that. Mallory.
Yeah, so my journey into astrology started when I was probably like 16 years old. And just like Sam was saying, self-study, the internet, and I didn't really take it too seriously. And that was kind of my relationship with astrology, where I would watch those kinds of updates or, figure out more things about my own chart. And then I don't know, probably in my early 20s, I started being interested in my friends' charts or partners and family. And I still didn't really take it too seriously. And then when my dad passed away, I was working in California in the cannabis industry. And I just kind of had this feeling like that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. And so I moved back home, and I was really just trying to figure things out. And sort of like Shane was saying, astrology kept nudging me, and I signed up for this astrology forecast from the Astrology Hub. And Gemini Brett was one of the speakers. And by signing up and doing like a few other things, like liking their post on Instagram or something, you entered to win this free reading. And I ended up winning a reading from Brett. And I asked him, like, would it make sense for me to be an astrologer? And he was like, yeah, it totally makes sense. And we started talking, and we had a mentorship connection, and I learned so much from him. But he really taught me the shamanic tradition with like modern sprinklings. And I had this really deep esoteric understanding of astrology, but it wasn't so rooted all the time. And I would wonder, like, where is this thing coming from, or where is that thing coming from? And I would find when I was interpreting charts that there would be points where I would not know what to do, and so I was like, I just wanted more structure and to come to like a more rootedness. And I ended up seeing an interview that you did of him, or that he did for you. I can't remember, but you guys were talking, and you were going to be at the Queer Astrology Conference. And so that's where I went, and you were talking about mastery. And that really just, like, for lack of a better phrase, like really turned me on. I was like, yeah, that's what I want. That's the kind of astrologer I want to be. I want to be a master of my craft. And when I got into the school, when you were first starting with the very like foundational Thales fundamental things, I was a little bit like, okay, what have I done? And we were talking about very basic things. I was wondering, like, what is this going to lead to? But it naturally built, and it informs the more in-depth and interpretive things that we're doing when we're looking at charts, now that we know like all of these roots where everything came from, it's like we've built our astrology on the shoulders of giants, right? And I feel very strengthened by that, because it's like the things that worked are in my system now, and things that I've learned from Brett that work, they're like in my system now. I feel very empowered in my own astrology, and when I'm reading a chart, I feel like I know where to go and I know what to do now. And what you talked about a couple of classes ago was how we learned how to work in the lab, and now we get to do lab work. And I totally agree with that, because there was moments in the class where I would just have epiphanies where all of the thing, it was like a movie moment where just like all of this information jumbled into like a few seconds, because I saw the connection between all of those things you had laid out in the beginning and what you were teaching us on how to read charts. And it was like Karate Kid moment. I remember that's what I said. You know, it's like, oh, that's why we were doing wax on, wax off. And so, yeah, I feel much stronger and rooted in my astrology practice. And I'm really grateful for that.
Awesome sauce. Thank you so much, Mallory. And, you know, I think when people hear me talk about this concept of mastery, it sometimes makes them feel uneasy. And the reason for that is because in the Western world, I think we're really uncomfortable with concepts like mastery and perfection and excellence. And it offends something of our Western sensibility when we hear those words. But I come from a traditional yoga background, and I also come from a ballet background. And I think within the heart of yoga tradition is this concept of perfecting ourselves and letting go of the parts of ourselves that are erroneous, or letting go of the parts of ourselves that aren't masterful, so that we can live more masterfully within the world. And that's also something that exists at the heart of classical dance, this sense of refining the body, refining the vehicle so that only dance flows through. So my goal at Oraculos is to create a space where you yourselves can experience that refinement so that only the astrology flows through. And I think that a lot of you have really tapped into that. So thank you for sharing that. Now, Emma Bulgarian.
So I started astrology with the LSA with Frank Clifford, which was modern psychological astrology, which was good. But I felt that I had hit a plateau and that I was reliant on books and internet and what other people said about placements and planets. And I wasn't comfortable or confident in my ability to read charts. So I felt a bit stuck with astrology for a while. And I felt that there was more to learn or more ways I could progress, but I didn't really know why or how. So I just gave it to the universe. I was like, hey, universe, I want to learn more, you know, find me a way. And then I came across your video on, was it Astrology University? I think so. And then I ended up enrolling on the course, like literally maybe 2 days after I'd asked the universe, like, show me the way. And yeah, it was the best thing that I've ever done. And I think the most important thing, and where I feel with modern astrology and how traditional astrology helps, is that it's a lot more defined and it's a lot more concrete. And now that I've gone through this traditional astrology, I can understand why I felt like I did before, because modern astrology, the symbology is like so large and it's not concrete at all. So it's so easy to look at a chart anyway, modern or traditional, and be so overwhelmed with information. But traditional gives you lots of rules and lots of structure that you can look at it and go, okay, this points to this points to that. And that rootedness helped me a lot. And one of the things that when we had our exam, I didn't look at one book, I didn't look at any notes, I just used my brain. And for me, that was such a big jump from always having to read 10 or 11 different people to just looking at the chart and being like, well, I've done this myself. But I think more fundamental than that, it was before I was reading other people's interpretations of charts. But now I feel that I can sit with a chart and speak to the chart directly, as opposed to like the voice of someone else. And I'm so grateful for that. And there's so much more to learn and so much more to practice. But I feel that through Oraculos, I've got a skill that is just worth its weight in gold, honestly. And I would recommend it to everyone. But also, I'd like to just say, people always kind of argue a lot between modern and traditional astrology. And I just want to say that it's a false distinction. Like, you don't have to be a modern astrologer or a traditional astrologer. And that it's one of my pet peeves, really, because the universe, like, we literally study the cosmos, the whole massive, huge thing. And the fact that people try to to reduce the universe down to these tiny little rules, it blows my mind. It's like, how can you study the whole thing and then just be so narrow-minded with particular things? But that's how some people argue. But I just want to say that you can have modern principles and you can have traditional principles, and they don't invalidate each other. Like, and there's no dilemma. You can do both. And I think for astrology and to be an astrologer, it is a bit of learning from different schools, and then how do you feel fits best? And that's where your own personal take and your own astrology comes from. Like, this works good for me, or that doesn't work good for me, or through my chart readings, I found X and Y. And that's how you build your own astrology and how you get good yourself. So I just wanted to say that. And then another thing is that I think traditional astrology can be quite intimidating. And a lot of these books, these 16th century books, where they write in very difficult to understand ways. You know, I had a copy of William Lilly for 3 years and I never bothered reading it. Well, I read it and then I put it straight back on the bookshelf and didn't pick it up again. So like, that makes zero sense. But with Oraculos and the way how Mychal teaches, I picked it up and I was like, oh my God, I understand this. And yeah, it was like a key, like a mystery had been unlocked. And now with the traditional books, now that someone's explained to me in modern century English, I can read it and understand it. And yeah, that's another amazing thing that before it was literally a mystery. So yeah, that's what I've got to say for that.
Awesome sauce. Thank you so much, Emma. And I love your use of that word, a key, because a lot of what we do at Oraculos is we give the keys to understanding these traditional books. And I remember you, Emma, about 6 weeks into the program, you said, well, hey, you promised us all these books. Where are they? And I was like, well, you know, I'm not going to give them to you just yet because I want to create a little bit more of an understanding of concepts within you so that when I finally do give you the books, you don't feel overwhelmed by the books, but you feel as if you have something inside of yourself to receive that knowledge. And so, yeah, a big part of understanding traditional astrology is having a key to understanding the language. And once you have that key, it kind of allows you to move through the various centuries of traditional astrology and find the singular line or the singular thread of similarity throughout those centuries. If you understand how to approach the material, it opens up the entire corpus of the material. And I think that's really important. And I'm so happy that you got that from this. And also, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're a traditional astrologer or a modern astrologer. It's really understanding what are the roots of this astrology. Because when you understand the roots of astrology, then it gives you more compassion within your heart regarding the ways in which astrology has developed, throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia. It gives you more compassion and more softness within yourself as you see astrology throughout the ages, because it has developed in a really natural sort of way. And even the things that we think are really bizarre in terms of modern astrology, they've still been built on this basis and this foundation of the larger astrology that we all practice. So it doesn't really matter what you practice, but just that you practice it well, and that you practice it in a rigorous way, and that you practice it in a way that brings you results that are concrete and that are significantly consistent. There's nothing that we can do that's going to always be 100%, but we want to be aligning ourselves with practices that gives us some level of consistency in our understanding, as well as consistency in terms of our results, because then we know that we're practicing something that has value, whether it was born 2,000 years ago, whether it was born 200 years ago, whether it was born 20 years ago. If it brings you consistent results, and if it connects back to the heart of this astrology that we know and love, then that's the thing worth holding on to. Now, next person, we have Catherine Bouquet, KPF, then Lindsay, then Sarah. So, Catherine, go for it.
Okay. So I came in with absolutely zero knowledge of astrology. I thought astrology was based on the sun signs. And
Catherine, what was that? No, there was a demon in your phone line.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh
wow, it's amazing.
No.
After we called his name, after we said, hey, there's a demon in your phone line, it just disappeared. So now, talk, go.
Okay, so I came in with absolutely zero knowledge of astrology. I thought astrology was sun sign astrology. That's what it was all based on. I also, like Shane, was sort of in this place with the quarantine that I was like, I'm going to take a fun class. And I'm going to take a class on astrology. And I was kind of going to these astrology summits, and I was going to sign up with somebody else, actually, and take their class. And then I saw you on Fresh Voices, and there was just something about you, Mychal. And I was like, I want to study. I'm going to study with that guy. And I really honestly didn't know what I was getting myself into. And, it transformed my life. It completely and utterly transformed my life, and it transformed me. And I am not the same woman that I was 4 months ago before I started this class. And even my husband notices it. My family notices it. There's a new passion in my life. And it's like a whole new world got opened up for me. And it was so overwhelming. I felt like I was drowning probably for the first month in the class. I just, it was so much information. And then it was like suddenly one day I saw, wow, Mychal's creating like a universe here, and the way that you taught too with the memorization techniques and the dream work and, sort of infiltrating like every crevice of my day-to-day existence with astrology to this point where suddenly I began to think astrologically. And it was an organic process. And I am so humbled by astrology, so humbled by it. And, things in my life that have humbled me and the way that astrology humbles me are things that, I gravitate towards, I want to be a part of. It's something so much bigger and more magical than I've experienced. And, I'm definitely going to continue my studies, and I'm just a big baby. But at the same time too, I know a lot, and I can look at a chart and I can do it okay. And I can draw essential dignities out of my little memory box that Mychal has been carefully making me 10-2 in my brain. So that's been fabulous. And it's also been wonderful to meet all of these wonderful people in this class. I've learned so much from everybody in this class, and it's a unique experience in that you have to interact and you have to kind of be a part. And I don't know how other people felt, but it was really weird and awkward in the beginning, and I wanted to hide. And to be able to be out here now and to feel like I've got these colleagues here is something that I didn't know I would get when I first signed up.
I don't even know what to say. Everything that you just said is everything that I wanted to build in this. I wanted to build this fellowship. I wanted to build this memory box in your brain. All of those things are things that I really wanted for you all to get. And so thank you for holding that.
I grew up watching Walter Mercado. I don't know if you've seen that person. He's beautiful, androgynous Puerto Rican that just con mucho, mucho amor. So astrology has always been part of, I guess, my cultural upbringing in a way. And that was the first time I had ever seen someone who was like a total gender fuck. No one could tell the gender of that person. So that person was just mesmerizing to me. And I'd always just read horoscopes or the really basic like books that are easy to read. But I knew that at some point, like I needed to dig a little deeper and understand how these systems came to be. And right before the pandemic, I was in a research department at a really prestigious art institute. And a lot of the work that I was doing was racial equity based stuff and finding out about people and their background and seeing patterns and trends. And when I worked with the younger people, I mean, people closer to my age, like the interns, I would ask them their sun signs and I would bond with them over astrology because that's how you build community sometimes. It's easy stuff that allow people to talk about themselves. And I started realizing that certain interns in certain departments were the same sun sign, or they all had the same rising sign. And I knew that I was hired into a department that was almost exactly the same. My entire department, it's all Capricorn, Virgo, and Aries, which Mychal had said, like the only way that an Aries can get something done is when they have a good Virgo or Capricorn or an earth sign that's going to stabilize them. And I'm like, that was my entire department. And the interns that we hired, also Capricorn, Aries, also earth sign. So I started seeing these things with like unconscious bias that I was working on with like unconscious racial bias also show up in like sun sign astrology. But that, and rising and astrology was not legible to the institution, even a creative art institution. So the closest thing was Myers-Briggs that was legible to understand people's Myers-Briggs and be like, cool, our entire PR department are people that are this, which is kind of Leo-like and it's kind of fiery sign. And like the people that run the museum and the money, they're all earth signs. And I just started seeing all of these patterns and I knew that I needed to get more of a fundamental understanding so that when I pointed these things out, it wasn't just like, it's the horoscope you read on on Twitter. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I know that I wanted to point something bigger in these institutions. And I needed to have some sort of like grounding, like historical backing for it. So when the pandemic hit and I knew I was going to lose my job, and I just sort of dropped a lot of research that I'm like, I don't need to be reading about diversity and equity. Literally the world is on fire right now and they are firing all of the radical vocal people of color. So like, I'm gonna spend more of my time researching things that I want to learn about. And I started accessing like research books about astrology and like these next level academic things. And I knew that I needed a community to work through some of these things together because it just did not make sense. I would watch YouTube videos and that was helpful, but then I realized there's Vedic astrology, sidereal astrologers, and like all these different branches that are looking at the same charts or the same planetary movements and telling me different things. So I knew that I wanted to find a mentor. And when I searched for like offerings, there was either like people that had pre-recorded classes, which I think it's great, but it doesn't allow those formats don't allow for this dialogue to happen and for community to be built and for me to learn from the other people that are also like sort of at my level, learning things and asking questions and basically filling in the gaps between videos. And I really was so close to like trying to find mentorship opportunities with this other collective of people on the other side of the world, but they didn't quite share the same values that I had. And I'll be really honest, I always try to seek for guidance or mentorship for queer people of color. Like that's always my the first thing that I do, the first ever consideration. That's always what I search for. And my best mentors have been Black women, brown women, have been queer folks. And so I just have a good experience like that. And I knew I wanted an astrologer that also shared those values, or at least identified, and I wouldn't have to face some of these awkward tensions. No, no hate to the people. I have mentors that are white people and men and all that. They're awesome too. But I wanted to learn specifically from someone that had another lens to it. And when I came across the Queer Astrology Conference, I'm like, what? There's more of them? There's a lot of them? And then they had a roundtable on like queer Black astrologers. I'm like, what? That's so specific. And everyone there was like literally so fire. And Mychal was offering these classes and I was like, wow, like this could not be better timing. I have more time right now. I'm so enthusiastic. This is the only thing keeping me going through the pandemic. And I want to learn. I want to build a vocabulary. So yeah, I followed Mychal to a couple of conferences that you spoke at. And I was just like, holy shit, this is so incredible. And you would be what is legible to the institution. If not, you present yourself in a way that you are the institution. So I'm like, dope, that's what I need. And even if it takes me however long it takes me to learn or to get to a level that's close-ish to Mychal Bryan and the way that he presents, like I'm down for the ride. I'm ready to absorb and to learn alongside other people that are also, that I see as my equals or like my peers, and in a sort of also mentor capacity, people that I'm learning from. And I cannot wait for the rest of Gen Z to grow up a little bit more and have more disposable income and more autonomy of their time to also join these conversations, because I know that that's going to open way more possibilities in terms of like equity and inclusion, or all these other things that like people are really cared about talking through in 2020. So that's my spiel. Thank you, Mychal, you will always be a sort of mentor to me, even if I stop studying with you. Like you were there, a person that I learned from and that saw me in some of the most stressful moments throughout the last 4 months.
Awesome sauce, KPF. And thank you so much for sharing that. It really means a lot. And yeah, this is a space for everyone. And I'm super happy that you felt as if this was a space that could also hold you, because that's really what I want, for everyone to feel welcome here. So thank you so much. Now, Phuket Solak.
Hi. Okay, I'm a little bit excited. I was looking for something that I can really understand and learn in Turkey, but the astrologers here, they know something, like they know a lot of things, but they're not good at teaching. Like they just know the knowledge, but when they tell something, it's really hard to understand and predict into real life. And I really wanted to learn this horary astrology, but it was still like teachers doesn't teach anything at all. After I saw your class, because I've been taking courses, a lot of courses from another astrologers as well, they're Turkish. And I saw that they teach nothing, because, you know, your teaching way is something that really understandable. And I think that you can teach anything, you know, like if you have information about it, you can just teach it. And I really like that, because I saw your videos on YouTube and I shared that with my mom, that I found someone who knows shit. So and then she saw you, even though she didn't understand anything because you're talking in English. She was like, you know, I liked him, so just text him. And then I was like, yes, this is it. So my career, you know, the astrology thing started with you, and I'm so glad. And it's also interesting for me that sometimes I find myself like, what the F I'm doing? Like, I'm learning astrology and I'm learning this in English. And this is actually, astrology is another language. Like, it's not about English, like the exaltations and mutual receptions and blah, blah, blah. This is another language, and I'm trying to learn it with English. But I'm so lucky that I found you. So, you know, this is the thing. So, and our classes are so funny and so full of information. Like, every class I learned something. And also the people I met here, they're really, really nice. That I love you all. And I was getting excited for the classes. So they keep me all the way through this pandemic thing, that I did a lot of things. Like, I lost a lot of things, but it was this class that I'm gonna just join every class, you know. I will do it. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Phuket, for sharing that. And thank you, Phuket's mom.
Yeah.
Tell your mom we said thanks. And Phuket, I think you brought up something that I hadn't even thought about. And I had thought about a couple things when you reached out to me initially to join, but I didn't realize that learning astrology would have been like learning a new language in another language that's different from your actual language. Wow. Wow. No, that's an interesting thing, because you're in Turkey, you live in Turkey, like that's been your experience, you know? And it, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I know that a lot of us here, we come from different spaces. I know, Lindsay, you're native Spanish speaking, and so are you, KPF. And Sarah, I know you speak Japanese. And I mean, we all have our little thing here, but I think, Phuket, you were definitely the farthest in terms of where you are geographically on the planet. Like, you're in Turkey, and so kudos to you for being here, sticking with it, and taking that up. Because I don't think it occurred to me until just now what that would have been. And I know I speak pretty fast, you know, I speak pretty fast, and I speak machine gun English. So in my mind, I was thinking, oh, I hope, you know, Phuket can really hold on to my machine gun English. But now hearing this other piece, it was learning a foreign language in machine gun English. That you're amazing. I'm really happy that you're here, and I'm really happy that you stuck with it. Thank you so much, Phuket. Okie dokie, Axe and Smokey. So going on to Lindsay and then Sarah, and then we would have done it.
All right. So it's kind of hard to say anything that people haven't already said. So I really second everything that everyone said so far. And I agree with what Phuket just mentioned, that class is really fun and it's intense and we have to be dedicated, but it's really enjoyable too. So I think, like everyone has said, it's really gotten me through the pandemic, and it's something like one of the only things I look forward to sometimes. So I love that. So I've told this to Mychal before, and I'll say it again, but this class is the thing that I didn't know that I needed. I was introduced to astrology kind of as I was coming up on my Saturn return, and became just increasingly interested in it. And I would read things online a lot. So I was more like an internet rabbit hole student, but I wouldn't have even considered myself a student at all at the time. And I found Mychal on YouTube, and I was really fascinated. So I did a reading with Mychal, and then I ended up here in this class. And I think at the time I just had a strong interest and I wanted to learn more, but with guidance, and I didn't really know where I was going with it. And I still don't know exactly where I'm going with astrology, but I know that I am going with it. So what I mean is, I don't know what that's going to look like in the future, but I feel very invested, especially because of being in this class. And, you know, in this class, we started at the beginning, like the very beginning, as a few of you have already mentioned. But I actually found that even the absolute basics were super profound. Like the way we went through it was very profound and very deep. And so even though it's basic, it was not basic. And I love that the approach, that Mychal's approach, is that we all need to understand, you know, the individual elements and roots of each component within astrology, so that in the end we have all the knowledge to put it together ourselves. And that's exactly what happened. For a long time, we didn't know why we were learning things. I think Mychal likes to call it spiral education. And I think now that we're at the end, we all know exactly what that feels like and what that really means. So yeah, you know, like Catherine, I was basically essentially a total beginner. I guess I knew some things, but I was a beginner. But I never really felt lost though. I felt like I was always, you know, being carried along at the right pace and the right speed to like fully absorb and understand all of the information. And so as time went on, it all starts to come together and everything seeps in. And it all feels like way more natural now. It feels natural now. And so it's really amazing to see how far we've all come, especially coming from different backgrounds and different levels of astrological education. So yeah, and it didn't come easy. Mychal challenges us a lot in every class. We do have pop quizzes. There's no homework, but there's pop quizzes. So there is homework if you want to pop quiz. And yeah, in the beginning, it was a little bit intimidating, but you know, when we don't know each other's background, it's always like, oh, I know less than everyone else. But then after a while, we all get to know each other and it really started to feel like a little community. And the only regret I have is that we can't actually meet up in real life because we're all over the world. But, you know, it is what it is. So I think what's really so magical about this is how it seeps in and creeps into your life, how everything we're learning creeps into your life, but in a really big way. It's been really mind-opening for me regarding all aspects of life. It's changed my perspective on a lot of different things. It's deepened my understanding of life in general, my life, relationships, especially my day job, which is in brand strategy, where it's essentially all about understanding people and culture. So it's really changed the way I think about the work that I do separately, which I wasn't necessarily expecting, but it really, it's been interesting. But yeah, it really just changes your perspective on everything. And I basically dream about astrology, and it has basically set the context for everything else in life. So it's one of those few things I look forward to this whole year, and that feeling has only gotten stronger as this semester has progressed. And overall, I feel like I walked into this without really thinking about what I was getting into. I think Catherine said something like that as well, where I don't know, I thought, okay, this will be cool. I want to learn more. And then immediately realized the level of dedication and engagement that this requires. But it has been so worth it. And in a lot of ways, it's changing the course of my own journey. And so that is why I say that this is the class I didn't know that I needed.
Thanks a million, Lindsay Summers. And also just tracking the pulse of everyone. For about the first month of studying at Oraculos, who asked themselves at least one time, why am I learning about this stuff? Like, did anyone have that experience?
I just trusted it. Like, oops, I always make a really loud noise as soon as I go off mute. I just trusted it because I figured, like, we have 4 months. There's a lot we're going to cover. There's a reason that we're doing this. I'm not going to question it because I know where we're going to get somewhere in the end. And so I didn't, but maybe other people did.
I just want to say I thought it, but we had talked before I took the class, and I told you about like my previous astrology experience, and we talked about it would be best if I just came with a beginner's mind, and it's not like I have to forget the things that I had previously learned, just setting them aside for the class to learn what's going on in the class. So when the thoughts came up, I didn't say anything. I didn't send you an email. I was just like, okay, I'm going to ride this out. But yes, I had those thoughts. I was like, what are we doing? I mean, Bailey's is cool and everything, but I was definitely questioning your motives. But I'm glad we got there.
I loved it. That's a no for me. I loved all of those moments because that's something you can't get in pre-recorded like footage. It's the, oh, someone said something and it triggered another organic thought and someone added more information, and that's what's really entertaining and engaging. Because other than that, it's just like I'm listening to a podcast and a YouTube video, and there's hundreds of them, but this experience is different, and I'm actively engaging and participating, even if I'm not always ready to like answer a question on the spot, but I am like absorbing a lot of it and appreciating all of those moments.
All right. So to just kind of think about where I'm coming from with astrology, you know, stars and planets are something that's been in my life for a very long time. My father, before being a Buddhist priest, used to work for NASA. So when I was younger, he would really, like, he gave me the first book he ever bought. That's like a star atlas. And I remember it being really special and not knowing anything about it or what it was really about. And it was just something there in the background. And then when I was in grade school, at the temple he worked at that time, they had like a book donation box. And I went through it and I found this very raunchy astrological like love compatibility book. It's like one of those little paperbacks. It's really thick. And it blew my mind in multiple ways, but you know, that was my first official introduction to astrology. And you know, as I went on, it was something that I studied very lightly in the background. So I'm definitely coming from a place of a lot of self-study. And I also took a modern psychological astrology course not too long ago, and it was a year, and I walked away from it not remembering anything besides maybe that Jupiter is expansion. You know, that was like, that was one of the main things. And I was really discouraged and disappointed in that. And I personally really thrive in a pretty like hardcore, like academic environment. I love structure. And if I'm gonna learn something, I want to know every little detail. And I also want to know that it's something for me to keep, that I've understood it enough, that it's internal. And I really do feel like this course is the only one that I've ever even heard of that begins to promise that. You know, a lot of classes are a lot more passive, and that can be very fun, but I really wanted to take this seriously. And before this, I've been a baker for years, and that is still a very major passion of mine. And I thought that I could get away with going every day and making something that felt spiritual and very hands-on. And then I realized I would just spend the whole time baking thinking about astrology. And, you know, I worked a lot of shifts alone, and I would spend my downtime when the bread was mixing for 10 minutes to study astrology and do like little workbooks. So yeah, this really came at a perfect time when I was wondering, how is my body going to last doing, you know, lifting 50 pounds every 10 minutes? And I'm also just constantly consumed thinking about the planets. And so, yeah, I mean, like Lindsay said, I don't think there's much I can say at this point that other people haven't said. But yeah, something major. I definitely dream about astrology a lot. You know, I cast a horror chart the other night, and I spent my whole dream night thinking about how the moon was separating from Neptune and going into a square with the nodes. And I was just, you know, I was trying to work with my brain. And yeah, I just don't think I could find that anywhere else and have that instilled within me outside of class. So yeah, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I showed you all my little box of secrets not too long ago before we went on air, because I come from a very magical background myself. And by magic, I don't mean magic as a descriptive word. I mean magic as a proper tradition. I'm a magician and several other things. And I wanted you all to get into that dream work as a basis for us beginning to do even deeper internal work as we move into 2021. And I'm sure not everyone has kept up with their dream journal. I mean, you don't have to say anything. I see the smiles. But for all that it's worth, I'm happy that you have had that foundation in knowing that you can coax yourself to dream in a deeper way, because as we move into 2021, we're definitely going to be taking those skills and developing the internal field of astrology within yourself. It's one thing to have astrology in your brain, which I know you all have, vis-a-vis our memory techniques, as well as just based on how we teach and learn at Oraculos. But there's another component that for me is non-tangible and invisible, but it's very much important. And it's this spiritual dimension of astrology, which isn't about something I teach you to believe about astrology. It's about me giving you the internal spiritual tools to interact with astrology in a deeper, more spiritual, more embodied sort of way. So, weren't we supposed to be getting superpowers today or something on December 21st? Isn't that a thing going on in the air? Because definitely we are going to be moving into a deeper space within ourselves that definitely can't be learned in a textbook, and that definitely will open up the field of your own perception as an astrologer, but also as a spiritual being studying a spiritual study. So I'm super stoked for January. Unless Shauna wanted to hop on the camera. Shauna?
I can't hop on the camera because my coworkers already think I'm crazy.
Okay, never mind then.
But I can say that this was a great semester, and thank you all so much for being such good students. And I was in the introductory class right before you guys. So I have now been at Oraculos for 9 months. And the same way that Mychal says, one day you just wake up and you know how to read a chart, I think I have just gotten to that point after 9 long months. So I'm so proud of all of you. And yeah, at the beginning, when you feel like you want to quit, after everything is kind of that soup, it does come together really, really nicely at the end. So congratulations to all of you.
Most definitely. And 9 months is how long it takes to make a baby. So for me, that's also how long it takes to grow a baby of astrology within yourself, which is why the first semester is 4 months, the next semester is another 4 months, and then as we go into the summer, you begin doing this practicum, because it ends up being 9 months long. So it goes with sense. There's a hidden agenda beneath everything. And yeah, Shauna has been my right-hand lady since the beginning of this, and I'm really happy to have you here, Shauna. And we have a really good team here. We have a great team of students, but we also have a great team in the background that makes all of this stuff possible. So this has been it's not our open house. We had our open house yesterday, but this has definitely been us opening our home at Oraculos for other people to come in and just hear some of the stories here. And some of the stories that I've heard today are stories that I've heard for the very first time. And I'm grateful to all of you for sharing your stories, because it means a lot to me to know you all a little bit better, and to know that you are here, a part of my home and a part of my family. And I can't wait to see what greater magical things we create as we move into 2021. So thanks a million. And for our viewers and listeners out there, if you want to find out more about the Oraculos School of Astrology, please feel free to go and visit our website at www.oraculosastrology.com and check out our events page to see whether or not you can hop into one of our upcoming programs or courses at Oraculos, because we would definitely love to see each and every one of you there. Have a good one. Bye-bye. All right, that's about it for that. So after this, not on YouTube. What? What do you mean? What was that meaning?
Like that part is going on YouTube. Now it's not.
Oh yeah, now it's not.
Yeah.
We can do
That's
whatever we want.